Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. I work at a gas station in the center of my town. My shifts aren't always the same, but I find myself often on overnights and early mornings most of the time. I'd been there for a whole year at this point, and honestly, I didn't really have many negative things to say about it. It was a perfectly normal, middle-paying job that only required me to stand in one spot for 8 hours and talk to the occasional customer. On this day, I was working an overnight shift, the typical 10 to 6. Although it's usually not too busy overnight on the weekdays, it's worth mentioning that it was raining a decent amount this night, so I was really expecting it to be a quiet night. The first couple of hours, I sat in a chair behind the register and just waited for anyone to come in. I got a few people that paid for gas with cash, but by 12:30 or 1-ish, it was basically dead. There were no customers coming inside, and barely anyone even getting gas outside. Now, with absolutely no customers to be seen, I went around the counter and started fixing up the shelves a bit. They weren't too bad, but it was just something to keep myself busy. As I was doing this, I had my back facing the windows. That's when I noticed headlights glare through the store. Someone pulled into the pumping stations. I didn't even bother to look. There was nothing interesting about a guy pulling in to get some gas or whatever. I kept on tidying up the shelves for maybe 10 or so minutes before I unconsciously glanced out the window. The car was still there by one of the pumps, with a man standing right next to it. As soon as I looked over, the man shifted away, making it obvious he had been looking at me. After seeing that, I felt a bit weirded out, especially since they had been there, supposedly pumping gas, for a whole 10 minutes. I went back to the counter, then checked out the window again 30 seconds later, and I could see the man getting into his car. The headlights flashed a few times, like he was trying and failing to turn it on. Eventually, he got it running and drove away in a real hurry. I stood there and just kind of looked out the window for a minute. Something really didn't seem right about this. I got an idea and pulled up the recent transactions for the pump he was at. The last time it was used was hours ago. He had been there for 10 whole minutes, not even pumping gas, doing nothing other than watching me through the window. I stayed behind the counter for a while, just trying to wait out the rest of my shift. A few more cars came and went, and then it got really quiet again. Around 3 o'clock, I heard something happening outside. The rain was really heavy at this point, but there was a rhythmic shuffling noise on the ground that was barely audible through it. It sounded like the footsteps of someone sneaking along the side of the building, moving toward the back area. I tried to look out the window, but there was not a good view. I did notice that no cars were in the parking lot or by the pumps, though. I quickly left the counter and went to the back door. It was a heavy metal door that had no windows or anything on it. I pressed my ear up against it and listened as the footsteps got closer and closer until they were right on the other side of that door. My eyes moved to the handle, waiting in silence before the handle turned slowly and slightly. It got caught by the lock, and it went quiet again. Almost a whole minute passed by when I heard a man's voice grunt in frustration. A sharp sound slid across the other side of the door. Footsteps followed soon after, leaving back and going around the side of the gas station. I ran back to the front, waiting to see the person walking away, but I didn't catch any sign of them. Acting quickly, I picked up the store phone and dialed 911, hoping to catch them before they got too far away. I couldn't see exactly what was happening outside, but I did know that someone had just been trying to get in through the back door, and they must have been intending on doing something bad. When the cops arrived, they didn't find the man, but what they did find was a car on the side of the road less than 1/4 of a mile away. It was the very same car I'd seen earlier with the man who had been watching me in it. It had run out of gas, it had mismatching license plates, and turned out to be some guy's missing car from 2 states over. The other thing they noted was a long scrape across the back door made by a sharp metal object, most likely a knife or blade of some sort. Knowing all these details, I think I actually got extremely lucky. The man was probably on the run already, if he'd stolen someone's vehicle, and he could have been planning anything. This happened about 12 years ago, when I was a university student living in Tokyo. I'm originally from the countryside. I returned home during summer break and met up with my friends. We would stay up until the morning light, drinking and trying to chat up women, generally just having a good time. It was pretty great. One night, my friend and I took some girls to karaoke. We had a great time, and after it was over, none of us really wanted to go home. A smile crept over my friend's face. He looked over at all of us and asked, "You guys feeling brave?" He told us about an old, abandoned villa up in the mountains. I had a driver's license, and I didn't want to seem like a chicken in front of the girls. I agreed to go, even though I'd never do anything like that again. The villa has since been destroyed, but at the time, it was pretty famous with the locals. There were urban legends spoken of around town. One went like this: apparently, a woman was murdered there, and if you went at night, you would see a spooky woman peering at you from the window inside the house. So off we went. I think we were more excited than scared at the time. I guess it was around midnight by the time we finally arrived. Why the hell was there this random villa in the middle of the mountains? I thought it looked completely out of place. I turned off the car's headlights to get a gauge of how dark it was out there. It was pitch black. I did start to feel a little nervous. We were in a group, though, so I didn't let it put me off the idea too much. Late-night urban exploration was always exciting. There was a barricade in front of the door, but we managed to break it down and go inside. The smell of dust and mold stung my nose. There was broken glass everywhere, and the atmosphere inside was very heavy. It seemed like numerous people must have been there before, as there was spray paint all over the walls. It was pretty eerie, but I felt reassured that my friend was pretty skilled in martial arts. I wasn't exactly weak back then either. I guessed we would be prepared for any trouble, but I was wrong. We spent a while in the abandoned villa looking around, smashing stuff up a bit, then we got tired and decided to head back to the car. I got back and listened to some music while chatting. Out of habit, I just so happened to lock the doors. I'm real glad I did. After a while, I noticed some headlights coming up the mountain in our direction. It looked like a car was pulling up. Who would be driving up here at 2 a.m.? I wondered to myself. I started to get a bit nervous. Maybe it was the police or something. Maybe we would get in trouble for trespassing. I asked my friends if they wanted to go now, but they said, "No, let's just see what happens." The car arrived at its destination. It appeared to be a taxi. We were at a complete dead end. Why would someone take a taxi all the way up here? We were all asking each other about this. The taxi stopped just a few meters away from my car when suddenly 2 people stepped out of the back seats. One of my friends thought they must be the owners of this abandoned villa. They just kind of stood there staring at us for a while. It was incredibly creepy. They then began to approach my car. One was a woman wearing a red, one-piece dress, and the other was a man in a suit. I'd guess they were about 40 or so. I couldn't really see their faces since it was so dark out. I couldn't believe what I was seeing in front of me. It felt like a dream. The man just approached the driver's side door, and the woman approached the passenger side. All of a sudden, they both started violently trying to open the car doors. They were straining and struggling so hard that the car was actually shaking with how much force they were putting out. My hair was standing on end. Now you know why I was so glad I locked those doors. The door handles continued to rattle, and they began to bang on the windows. We were all terrified. I snapped out of my fear-induced daze when one of my friends screamed, "Drive! Let's get out of here!" There was a lot of screaming. I started the engine. My friends were on the verge of tears as these two strangers kept trying to break into my car. Eventually, we got away and pulled into a family restaurant. Everyone was shaking and asking questions, but no one had the answers. After a while, we calmed down. We sat down in the restaurant with our drinks. I asked my martial arts friend why he didn't try to go out there and fight them. He's usually so full of confidence. He just said, because he didn't think it was a fight he could win. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.